Generational trauma is one of those things that we don't always recognize until we're deep into our own parenting journey. Maybe it's the way you flinch when your child cries because you were never comforted, or the guilt that creeps in when you take a break because rest was never modeled for you. If you're a neurodivergent mom trying to break cycles while raising kids, this episode is for you. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the nostalgic Neurodivergent, where we talk about neurodivergence, parenting, and life, served with a side of nerdy zennial energy. I'm Corey, and today we're diving into a big one: healing generational trauma as a neurodivergent mom. Because, let's be real, breaking cycles is exhausting, and when you add in executive dysfunction, RSD, and sensory overwhelm, whew. But here's the good news. It's possible. And you're already doing the work just by being here. So in this episode, we'll cover what generational trauma actually is, with a science-backed breakdown, how neurodivergence makes cycle breaking both harder and necessary, the mindset shifts that need to happen to make healing possible, and practical strategies to start healing generational trauma. So first, let's define what we mean by generational trauma. It's not just bad parenting or family dysfunction. It's deeply rooted, inherited stress responses that get passed down over generations. Research in epigenetics has shown that trauma can literally change how genes express themselves, meaning that if past generations lived in survival mode, that stress wiring can be biologically passed down. For neurodivergent moms, this is especially important because many of us grew up masking, people-pleasing, and living in flight or fight mode. Our nervous systems are wired for survival, not rest. And now as parents, we're realizing just how much we have to unlearn. Growing up, though, we didn't call it generational trauma. It was just, that's how we've always done things. But just because it's always been done a certain way doesn't mean it's healthy. So if you've ever thought, why is breaking these cycles so much harder for me than it seems to be for others? You're really not imagining it. Neurodivergent individuals experience trauma differently due to heightened sensitivity, emotional intensity, and difficulty filtering out past experiences. Rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD, makes it harder to set boundaries because we fear being seen as bad parents. Executive dysfunction makes consistent parenting routines harder to maintain, even when we know what we want to do differently. And sensory overload makes it harder to stay regulated when we're breaking patterns of yelling or emotional dysregulation. Cycle breaking isn't just hard for neurodivergent moms. Sometimes it can be an uphill battle. But knowing this means we can work with our brains instead of against them. Think of this like an old dial-up internet connection. You're trying to download a whole new parenting operating system, but the old programming keeps slowing it down. That's why healing takes time. So healing generational trauma doesn't just happen overnight, and it doesn't happen through perfection. Here are some mindset shifts that help. I am not responsible for how I was raised, but I am responsible for how I move forward. Breaking cycles doesn't mean parenting without mistakes. It means parenting with awareness. Rest and self-care are not luxuries. They're reprogramming. The key here is progress, not perfection. Because every time we pause before reacting, every time we offer our child the patience that we may have never had, every time we are modeling self-regulation, we're already breaking cycles. So what can we do to actually start healing? Here are some strategies that actually work and that you can try. Start by identifying patterns. So what triggers you the most in parenting? That's usually where your generational trauma is going to show up. Next, you can regulate before you react. So use grounding techniques before responding to high emotion situations. Number 3 is to narrate your healing out loud. So if you react in a way you don't like, tell your child, I didn't handle that the way I wanted to. I'm working on doing it differently. So this models repair and self-awareness. And finally, rewrite that story. Journaling, therapy, and inner child work can help you reframe your past instead of repeating it. So the goal here isn't to fix everything in one generation, but it is to create a healthier starting point for the next. So think of this like rewriting an old video game save file. You can't erase everything that came before, but you can start making new choices moving forward. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Healing generational trauma isn't about fixing yourself. It's about giving yourself permission to parent in a way that feels good, even if it's different from how you were raised. Healing is a messy, imperfect, and non-linear, and that's okay. The fact that you're even trying means you're already breaking those cycles. So if this episode resonated, grab my 5 simple steps to release generational trauma and break the cycle guide. It is packed with strategies to help you take the first steps in healing generational trauma. You are allowed to parent differently. You are allowed to heal, and you are already doing better than you think. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who may need to hear this message as well. The more people we reach, the more people we help. And don't forget to grab your free 5 simple steps to releasing generational trauma guide. The link is in the show notes, and I will talk to you again soon.